and welcome back. Now, getting on with the Lomax, one of the issues I think I face is just finding the time. I don't have big blocks of time normally to spend on it. I know I managed to squeeze some time doing the chassis welding, which I still need to finish, but I want to squeeze a few bits in here and there to keep the program rolling. It's a huge amount of work to do, and unless you keep it ticking over, you're never going to get to the end. So what I'm going to do now is just try and film some short bits and pieces when I have a few minutes down the shed, that I can get stuff done. Okay, let's see what I can do. Well, here is the completely unglamorous part of the job, but before you can work on the bike, or car engine in this case, you've got to clean it. No good trying to work on it when it's filthy, dirty and greasy. Well, work on it like a professional would, and get in there and get rid of all the dirt and the grease, so that you can take it apart cleanly, put it back together cleanly, and it's just a dirty, messy job, but it has to be done. Okay, one cylinder head that I've cleaned as best I can in the condition it is. It'll need more cleaning, but at least it means I should be able to get this apart without getting my hands too dirty and too much grit and everything else into the engine. Really, it's just been cleaned with white spirit or Stoddards or whatever it is in the US. So that's interesting. Push rods don't seem to, there we go. Push rods coming out, rounded end goes into the cylinder head, fatter end into the engine. These are the bolts hold the shrouds on. I'm not using shrouds, so I shouldn't need these bolts, but see, oil and rubbish everywhere. So this stuff's all being put aside for further cleaning. Brake line with its copper crush washer. The standard, these come with a tiny 1mm oil fluid line, 1mm hole in here for the oil to come through, which is silly. You've got quite a big hole for the oil to come through, you've got quite a big pipe, and then you've got a tiny little 1mm screw hole in there for it to get from that feed pipe into this fitting and into the cylinder head. I guess Citroen knew what they were doing, but you can get these with a 2mm hole, which I would have done, but I'm going for something slightly different. I don't think it takes these bolts, so. So cylinder head, so we have intake port on this side, it's a bigger one, an exhaust port on that side. Now one issue we have is these screws here, because they can be really very tight, and I think I'm going to have this problem with this engine. So I think I might have to let these soak. Because these do not seem to want to come off. Nope. Okay, well that's it for the moment. Let's get some penetrating oil into there and see what we can do. So while I wait for either the bolt that holds the rockers on to unseize, or to buy a tool that enabled me to to actually undo them a bit more effectively. I've started work on doing the next clean on the engine. Now I did a rough clean on this engine. Can't remember if I filmed it or not originally, so that it was at least partly handleable, but it still left it quite dirty. So now it's just a question of cleaning it down, so you can see it's a little bit better at the top now, so that I can actually start moving this engine around without getting oil all over my hands. At the end of the day, oil and the grease is supposed to be inside the engine, not outside. The outside of the engine should be clean, and that's what I want to achieve with all these parts, is so that I can actually put this in and out the chassis, test fit and all this sort of stuff, without getting dirty and oily. Well, dirty we'll get, but at least I'm not going to get oily. So yep, more cleaning, and let's see if I can order the tool today. So the engine is cleaned now. What I've just had to do is I've had to use a bit of heat to remove a recalcitrant cylinder head. My mind has gone blank as to what these are called. But the actual bolt here, it was a bit galled up inside here. Now I should say I didn't actually need to remove these. It's just that with them poking out the sides, I did feel there was a bit of a temptation to grab hold of them to lift the engine, and there's a possibility they might get a bit banged about. So I wanted to take them out. This one I said didn't want to come out, so it was a bit galled up inside. Probably just the usual alloy to steel corrosion. So I'm just chasing the thread. It's a 9.1.25 it seems, so that I can actually get the stud back in there, and whilst I'm at this I might as well just chase the others as well. Although they came out fine, there's no point in actually missing the opportunity, as it were, just to give them a quick double check. Airline does a much more better job of cleaning these off than anything else. Okay, so I'm going to blow these out, do the ones on the other side, and that's the engine cleaned. I've got the fuel pump to clean up, and then just put the bolts back in the holes, and it's back to the cylinder heads. Now, one thing I did discover when taking the clutch off to clean it is that it's down to the rivets on the clutch plate. So that's a new clutch. Something else to add to the bill, and of course after I've just ordered parts, so that's on the next order. I don't need it yet, so it's no big deal, but yeah, wasn't expecting that. But service parts, and at the end of the day it'll produce a more reliable engine, so that's all good. Okay then, back to the cylinder head. Now, so these bolts here which hold the rockers on I couldn't get off before, so I bought the special tool. Now I think these are 6mm, and they're sort of a double D shaped, well, as you can see, the camera will actually focus. So yeah, so you've got these nuts here. Now they're very small, which means so I think they're only 6mm, which means you would only get a 6mm spanner on them. Now I did try with mole grips, not too much force, but they were already starting to muck up a bit from previous people who've been into the engine, and I didn't want to do any more damage to them, and I needed to apply a bit more force than it would need, so I bought the tool. it's a bit of an investment. It's not cheap, but there we go. So that's the tool, and with that, they cracked right off. There we go. So they're hand tight now. So job done. So no more damage to the engine in getting these undone and out of the way. So it's a very simple cylinder head. Let's just see. So intake, it's going to be this one. Now this cylinder head has been roughly cleaned, but it is still dirty. So everything is oily and needs to be cleaned. Alright, so it's just a push fit in there. Now, looking at it the way it's come off, everything you need to pay attention is you've got a washer and a spring washer, so that's the order they go in. Spring washer inboard, and the other washer outboard on that end, and you've got a spacer on this end. Then that's it, really, for this. So these don't look too bad. There's not a lot of wear on them. Now these are, they're not sided. You can replace them this way round to equalise the wear out. You can shift it over there. It makes no real odds. It looks a little bit galled up here, but that's on the edge. That's probably a bit of rust. Issue here with this cylinder head is lubrication, but as you saw, there was plenty of lube in the rocker. But these are not too bad at all. There's a very little wear on the actual tip there, so it's all looking good. So I'm just going to clean these up and rebuild them. I'm just putting them down over there where I've marked up, which is the indicator, which is exhaust, but frankly it doesn't really matter. There's no difference between these rockers. You could put the back the other way round, and yeah, so there's a copper washer on the screw head. As I say, they're just a push fit in there. Same two washers, spacer, and again, no particular wear. But yeah, so that's these. Aside from the fact they're sided, like number one and number two, there's no difference between them. And of course, you couldn't possibly get them back together wrong, because they wouldn't work. So it's not that hard. Now notice that the tips are heat blued. I don't know whether that's from the heat of the engine or a result of somebody regrinding these in the past. I'm suspecting someone's reground them, because they've got very little wear on them. Very little wear at all. Now which was which? So that's my inlet. As I say, you can't get it wrong anyway. You simply wouldn't be able to put it back together properly. And pretty much the same with the valves. There's no difference as far as I'm aware in the valve springs and the collets and stuff. They are an identical spring. So it's, as I say, it's very hard to get this stuff wrong. The only thing is, it's good to keep them together for so that it's all been, they go back as they were in terms of machining. Right, so standard motorcycle type compressor is all that it needs. Always makes me jump. So never point the stuff at yourself. It'll always end badly if this jumps off, as they do sometimes. Good. So two collets should just fall out, and I'm on the exhaust port. Right. So these springs are green, which were slightly uprated springs for these. They're not handed or sided, and the collars, so the collars are different, top and bottom, as you would expect. This one's got to get over the valve stem seal and stuff, so again, can't really mix them up. It's a bit sticky, but floats backwards and forwards okay. And aside from being a bit carboned up, otherwise isn't too bad. A little bit of wear on those. And interesting, it has a different valve stem seal on this one to the other head. So one of the heads has been rebuilt, or it's they're a mismatched pair of heads. Don't know, either is possible. Now, the one thing that I don't know whether it's going to be possible to see on here is, I'm not sure I can get the light on this. Right, okay, now just down here, there we go, there's a hole, and that is the only hole through which the oil comes into this head. So here is the oil inlet, here is where it comes out into the head, and that's it. There is no other means of this oil, of the oil lubricating. There's no, as far as I can see, there's no feeds into these. This is blank. There's no oil gets into this one at all. That's just a screw there, and this is the hole where the push rod. I like the push rods come through here. This is where the head bolt runs through, so there's no lubrication in here at all, other than what comes through this tiny hole and then gets splashed around the head. There's no lubrication to the inlet valve. As I say, it's purely splash, and the splash obviously keeps the valve stems lubricated as it comes up, and that's it. So and even then it shouldn't do much, because the idea is that it should seal it. So really minimal lubrication on these heads, but they seem to survive quite well. Right, time to do the same to the other one. Since I'm replacing these anyway. But yeah, these do look to be like this appears to be an uprated valve stem on here. Yeah, that is definitely not the original ones. This looks like it's definitely an improved valve stem. So somebody's been in here before, which is what I expected. So I think these have been rebuilt not that long ago. Okay, time to take the other one out. Okay, so this has had an initial scrub. Now got most of the dirt washed on it. It's still dirty and greasy deep down in there. Really just washed off in mineral spirits, blown off with the compressed air. Gets quite a lot of it off. It's still carboned in there and stuff, so it will still need more cleaning. But at this point, I just want to make sure things like the gasket areas are clean, and clean off that carbon. From the heads, clean off the valves. But what I also want to do at this point in time, I bought some more studs, but because these are looking a little bit rusty. But first of all, I want to see whether or not I can actually just get them to that's what's happening. I wonder what's happening with my can. It's leaking on me. Maybe the tube wasn't in there properly. That's a bit better. No, still doing it. Oh well, I'll just sort that out another time. Just see if we can clean up the threads a bit. Ideally, you could probably extract these studs and replace them. As I say, I did buy new ones for that exact purpose, but I'm not sure I've actually got any nuts and bolts that will fit this, or nuts that will fit this, that would allow me to do that. I might give it a go. It's best obviously done when the head is fully stripped like this, so that it can be heated without worrying about valve springs and gaskets and stuff being in the head. So let's see how well this works first of all. So this particular one looks very rusty. In an ideal world, having done the initial clean, I would now bead blast it but I don't have a facility for bead blasting. I guess that's another want that needs to be satisfied. Something, another bit of kit for the shed, some sort of bead blasting cabinet, so I can actually clean this stuff up properly. So I'm going to be working on it. There we go. These threads seem okay actually, just a little bit rusted out, so I don't want to pull these studs out unless I need to. As I say, I've got the studs now, so when I need to I can do it. Yeah, that looks okay. Right, so time to get the wire brushes out, brass brushes out, and see what I can do to clean these up. Okay, that's all for now.